So let us start. Good evening, everybody. So we were discussing obstruction type flow meter, and one of them is orifice plate or like this, or venturi tube, whatever you call it. I mean, there is another type of orifice, venturi tube is also there. So we place on the flow path some obstruction, that is an orifice plate, and we measure the pressure difference P1 minus P2. And we have seen that for an incompressible fluid, we can write it down that Q is equal to, that is the volumetric flow rate, is equal to CD into A2 is the area of the orifice divided by square root of 1 minus beta to the power 4. Beta it was d2 by d1, that is this is a d1 if I call it, and this is a d2 we call it, circular cross section, and 2g divided by gamma. In fact, gamma is the specific weight. Basically, gamma is equal to rho into g. So if you want, we can simplify it as 2 by rho also. So we have seen that this could be a very useful technique and a very robust technique for measurement of flow rate there. But one thing is always required, which we have just mentioned, that we require square rooting. So suppose this P1 minus P2 I can measure using a differential pressure meter, and we get some voltage there. But to get a output which is proportional to the flow rate, we require first of all that this quantity which is corresponding to the voltage, or maybe the voltage corresponding to P1 minus P2, has to be square rooted. So, which is important to have a square rooting circuit. There are many ways we can do the square rooting circuit, but I just tell you one of the way which is a popular method for this one. Actually, there are certain ICs available for this one. These ICs are not only for square rooting, actually it's a more general. If you look at it, there are two types of IC. One is a linear IC, one is called non-linear IC. Linear IC is like op-amp or this sort of thing, or this amplifier, any type of amplifier, these are the linear. While this non-linear IC, they perform some actually some task which is cannot be done by linear IC, but they are all definitely in analog in nature. One of them is a very important and a popular one, is called the multiplier IC, where actually we have seen using op-amp we can add some signal, two signals we can add, we can subtract or like this. But if we require to multiply two signals, and for multiplying these two signals, this multiplier IC is very useful. There are several ICs are available, AD534, AD633, like this. Analog devices, but there are other A also there. What is a representation for this multiplier IC is like this. It means that this is a multiplying. X is basically it's a multiplying two signals. And here there are few input terminals, X1, X2, Y1, Y2, all are floating inputs. Its supply is normally plus 10 volt, and other one is a ground, and this is an output V out, and also two input terminals are also there. They call it Z1 and Z2. So basically, you can say that it has got three pairs of inputs, x1, x, y, and z. All of them are floating inputs. So x1, x2, y1, I2, and z1, z2. And the output voltage V out, one terminal is grounded and another is normally connected to plus 10 volt. And now how this V out is represented? V out is equal to some an AD, that is a differential gain, into x1 minus x2 into y1 minus y2 divided by SF minus of Z1 minus Z2. What is SF? SF is called scale factor, because if we multiply two signals, the voltage may go high and beyond the saturation limit, and that's why we need to scale down. And this is, for this case, is 10 if supply voltage is equal to plus 10 volt. So this is the EADR. For this case, I can safely take it that the supply voltage is plus 10 volt, so the scale factor is equal to EADR. So, of course, this is a, and obviously this AD is the differential gain It's a differential gain. If you recall, the op-amp has also a differential gain, but this differential gain is very high, ideally infinity. So here also the same case, it is ideally or very high, I just put it. So AD is basically tends to infinity. You can just consider very high there. Now the question is that, okay, I know this one. Actually, if you go to the data sheets of these two there and also of these ICs and also their application notes, you will find very interesting applications there. Very interesting applications there. In fact, some of them can be used for bridge linearizations and etc. also there. Now the question is that how to multiply two signals. How to multiply two signals there. So our objective is to how to square root a signal, but before that we just try to see how to achieve it. So first of all, how to multiply two signals there. So we say a multiplication of or a multiplier. So this one, if we connect it properly, we claim that it can multiply, we can have an output which is actually proportional to the multiplication of two signals there. So we can say that is a multiplier, just one configuration I am showing it. That is a multiplication, I will call it. Okay. Multiplications, how do you do it? So, between x1 and x2, I apply the input Vx and I assume that this x1 is a positive terminal, Vx2 is negative terminal. Similarly, y1 and y2. This is the voltage I apply there. So I ground Z2 and obviously there is a E is there, plus 10 volt. I ground this one Z2 and Z1 is connected to your V out. So I can start with this one that I have already drawn it here. So it is V out is equal to, what is this? AD into Vx into Vy divided by 10 minus of, what is Z1? Z1 is V out and Z2 is 0 voltage. We can write it down. But we know that AD is the differential gain is very high. So if it is very high, then we can say that this must be is equal to 0. So approximately very close to 0. So in that case I can say, so rather V out by AD is almost equal to 0. So what we can say is that Vx into Vy divided by 10 is equal to V out. So we can say that V out, the output voltage, we can is multiplication, is proportional to the multiplication of two voltages, Vx and Vy. So it's a nice way to multiply two signals there. Okay. So if we can multiply two signals, obviously we can divide one signal by another signal. We can, if it is a multiplication, that means if the two signals are same, we can square a signal. And definitely, if we can square a signal, so definitely we should also be able to get a square root of a signal here. So the thing, our objective is getting a square root of a signal, which would be coming out from the differential pressure sensor there. So let us see that I am not going into the A there. I leave it to you to find out or just think of how we can make a divide two signals there. I can make it as a multiplication. I can, whether I can do it division also. I leave it to you, but I will be going directly to square rooting there. So what is the circuit for square rooting? Let us try to see that one. Okay. So first of all, I will do it. sorry, just don't write, made a mistake. So here it is plus 10 volt, here it is ground, and here X1 and Y2 are connected. Okay. While X2 and Y1 are connected and grounded. Okay. And this one between Z1 and Z2, I give some voltage plus minus Vz. And I put a diode and I say RL, and this is your V0 there. Okay? So, what I can say is that, okay, for the time being, this diode we can neglect. We can ignore the presence of diode. Why the diode is necessary, we will discuss it afterwards, but let's try to think of the diode is not there, we just try to put it there. So in this case, what is your V0? V0 is equal to AD into what is there? Here you see the same V0 is coming. So V0 into minus V0, because you are connecting between X1 and X2. So you can see here it is positive and here it is negative voltage. Divided by 10 minus of, what is it? Z1 minus Z2. But in this case, you just see Z1 is at negative potential, Z2 is at positive potential. So here it is minus of Vz. Agreed? So this is the relationship we have. And what we know that AD is very high, tends to infinity. So V0 by AD, we can consider it to be 0. In that case, what is it? V0 square by 10 is equal to Vz. Or we can say V0 is equal to square root of 10 into Vz. So we can have a nicely a square rooting circuit which can be connected to our pressure sensor output, of course after the signal conditioning, to get a square root of this one, so that you can get the linear relationship with the output voltage with the flow rate there. So we can get it. But the question is that, why do you connect? We need to connect that diode here. As you can easily understand that diode is only some sort of make it unidirectional flow or like this. This is because what will happen is that if it is by mistake, say suppose I connect a opposite polarity voltage. If I connect a opposite polarity voltage, then what we are asking to get an output which is a square root of a negative number, which is getting an output which is a square root of a negative number. We don't know what will happen to the circuit, but the same circuit may give very erratic result or also get damaged. We don't want to have it, so that we wanted to, before applying the feedback, we wanted to ensure that this voltage is always positive, and this voltage will be positive if we give the improper here there so that it is a forward biased and the damage or the erratic reading is not here. Is it okay? You can see more applications to this one in Franco's book, in the book by Franco and this Webster and Palasarini. More examples, more applications of this one is given, but I tell you, as also I have shown you that this multiplier can also be used for, earlier also we have seen it, if it can be used for phase sensitive detection. You multiply the input and the output, and you can see that the primary as well as the secondary, you multiply it together. So we can have it, in that case, we can do the phase sensitive detection by LVDT by making it direction sensitive, and thus by making it direction sensitive. Is it okay? Any question?
No, sir.
Okay, so I will suggest that this is very interesting applications. Actually, we used to give some there, some experiments also with digital multimeter. If next semester in the ID2 lab, you may get the scope to work on it again. Okay. So this one is over. I will then go for the other types of flow meter, which we have already mentioned, that is a rotameter. Now, I've given an introduction to rotameter in the last class and give some applications and there. So, this rotameter is basically an obstruction type flow meter. And if we say that orifice or venturi plate as consider it as a flow meter, performance as flow meter, we say it is a constant area variable pressure flow meter. Because we said that this was a orifice and the orifice plate area, this opening area, is always constant, and depending upon the flow rate, the pressure drop between P1 and P2 be changing. On the other hand, this rotameter, we call it, it is just the opposite. It is the variable area, constant, I think variable pressure, constant pressure. I will put it constant pressure drop rather, flow meter. So what we can say is that we try to maintain P1 minus P2 constant, and on the other hand, we try to vary the orifice area or the flow area. That way we do it. So you can say both of them are obstruction type flow meter, but this is the difference there. But obviously, this has got certain applications and there advantages, because you know the orifice plate and this Venturi, these are all very complicated and it requires so many modules to be cascaded like this. But this is a orifice type flow, I mean the rotameter type one. It is it is calibrated in terms of flow rate, and we can read it. So it doesn't require any electrical signal and all other things there. So it is basically simple in construction there. So advantages are simple in construction. Next is can be used for wide range of flow variation. It is approximately 10:1. While in the case of, as I told, that because of the square rooting and all the things there, the accuracy is less if the flow rate is less. That's why we don't have we cannot rely on the flow meter reading if the flow rate is below 25% or 10 of the maximum flow rate or the rated flow rate. So that's why it is important to have so it can be, but in this case we can go up to 10%, minimum flow rate may be the 10% of the rated one. And third one is by proper, sorry. So, by proper design of the float, we'll see what is float and like this. It can be made insensitive to viscosity and density, fluid density and variation. And in the other turn, you can say can be used as a standard flow meter. What we mean by a standard flow meter? Which is a standard based on which we can calibrate other instruments there. You must have noticed that it was the Q is equal to CD into A2 divided by root over 1 minus beta to the power 4 divided by 2G by gamma into P1 minus P2. So, if the gamma changes, the reading flow rate, the reading will change, as well as we have assumed that it is a Reynolds number is high, so it is a perfectly turbulent flow. But if the flow rate is less, if it is a viscous or lower to the nearly viscous in between the turbulent and laminar flow, then it may also give error. But in this case, there is, since it can go for even very low type of variations also there. So both I will see it how the viscosity and the fluid density variation, it can make it significantly, the dependence on these things significantly less. But what we can say it is a disadvantage is that low accuracy around say 2% plus minus 2% accuracy. On the other hand, we look for less than 1% or accuracy for any instrument here. Now let us see how does it work there. Let us see how does it work. And what is the construction? The basic construction I have told it also in the last class, that first of all, the tube is tapered towards the ear there, lower ear, and it has to be held vertical. So the flow should be always from low to high like this. And this is a tapered pipe. Which we have already mentioned earlier, that a bamboo is a slightly tapered or like this. So we can also have, basically it is a, in use is a glass tube which is a tapered. And this is called a float, which will be floating there. Basically, you can easily understand, very look at it. The flow will come from lower to higher one, and that will give a upward driving force, and that will be act against the weight of the downward force. So it is the weight of the float there, and it rests at some point where both the forces, the upward and downward force, are in equilibrium. So in the Chinese the document which we have mentioned earlier, they used to call the float as fish, because fish also floats, because the float name was not there, they called it fish there. But let us try to see what is there. So first of all, we say nomenclature, we just put it like this. Say suppose what we can say, you can see a section there, just the bottom of it. So if it is a circular tube there, what we can say, in the middle it is blocked, but the outside surface, the flow can go over like this. And this is basically forming an orifice area. This is forming an orifice area. And as it goes up, there would be, as it goes up, the orifice area will increase. So what we can say, that just these sections below this one, say suppose the P1 is the pressure, and above this one orifice, that means orifice before the orifice and above the orifice, the pressures are P1 and P2. So we can say that.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
So float is circular.
Yeah. Float
cross section is circular.
Huh?
Sir, the cross section of float is circular, right?
Yeah, yeah. Basically,
Okay.
you can, I will tell it is a circular float. So we can say it's a circular float. So it is also a circular tube also. Tapered pipe, this is also circular. So you can see then the outside there is a ring which is forming where the flow is going there. So you can say,
Sir,
yes, please.
Sir, and the orifice location, how it is, I did not exactly understand how the orifice is placed with respect to the float. I did not understand.
You are not being able to appreciate how do we call it an orifice there, is it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So if we look at it in orifice, in the pipeline, some portion is obstructed. Some portion is obstructed, and some portion we pass the flow through a certain portion only. Okay?
Yes, sir.
So here is the pipe, here is also pipe. This is the total actual flow area. The flow is going up and it is throughout the pipe there. But now once it sees an obstruction,
Okay,
this
sir.
is the thing where the obstruction, equivalent to the obstruction here. And the outside, there is a circular here. You can put it like this, if we put a cross-sectional view. So this is your float, and this is your flow area. Okay? So in this case, orifice is at the center, but I can say the orifice at the circumference.
Yes, sir. Understood. Okay.
Got it? So
Yes, sir.
we call it this as P1 is a pressure before the P1 is the pressure before orifice. P2 is the pressure after orifice. Gamma 1 is the specific weight of the float, and gamma 2 is the specific weight of the fluid. And I say AF is the area of the float, basically cross-sectional area. I put it cross-sectional period. And I say this is, say, suppose section is XX. AT is the cross-sectional area of the tube at this position at XX. Okay? Now, first of all, if we look at it, that the free body diagram of the float, what we can say, this is your upward force Fu, this is your downward force Fd, and obviously the weight of the float is downward W. So we can say at equilibrium, so we say that Fu minus Fd is equal to W. Upward force must be there, and then Fd is the downward force, must be balancing the W, that means equal to the weight there. Okay. So what I can say is that what is W? Okay. I can say what is the upward force and what is the downward force. I say this W is equal to Vf into gamma 1 minus gamma 2, because its specific weights are different. So float and this one, because it is floating, so naturally it is the Vf into gamma 1 minus gamma 2, where Vf is the volume of the float. Okay? So what we can say is that, and this Fu, instead of this one, I can say P1 into AF minus P2 into AF is equal to Vf into gamma 1 minus gamma 2. Okay? So we can say that P1 minus P2, the pressure difference is Vf divided by AF into gamma 1 minus gamma 2. Agreed? Now, I go for the very basic expression which we started, that is our Q is equal to CD into A2 divided by square root of 1 minus B2 divided 4 and root over 2G by gamma into P1 minus P2. Okay. Now, from that expressions, I can easily write it down that Q, that is a QV, I call it a volumetric flow rate, is equal to CD into what is the A2? A2 is nothing but AT minus AF, because this is the flow area, that is the which we had it in this one, the opening there, divided by what I can write is equal to root over 1 minus AT minus AF divided by AT whole square, because we thought it came because of the area if we go for it. Yeah. And this is equal to 2G by of gamma 2, because it is of the fluid, and here it is P1 minus P2. Okay? Is it all right? Can you see it? Okay, this is visible. Huh? So, but one thing is that this expression, look at this expression. There, this P minus P1 minus P2 is always constant. It is just countered by the weight of the, or the weight or the specific, sorry, of the weight of these things there. So, the question is that in this case, if I replace it, I can say it is CD into AT minus AF divided by square root of 1 minus AT minus AF whole square divided by AT basically into 2G by gamma 2 and into VF by AF into what is it? Gamma 1 minus gamma 2. Okay? So, you can see the pressure difference is constant. So, naturally, this is always changing, is constant. What is changing? It is changing is the AT, that is a area of the tube. So, what we are doing is that in this case, that here the pressure drop remains the constant, but AT is changing, and that is what we are trying to do. And that's why it is called is that the constant pressure drop variable area type sensor. So, what is happening? As the flow rate increases, what will happen? The pressure drop has to be maintained. So, naturally, the area of the orifice has to increase, and that's why it will go up like this there. And that's the very basic thing here. And we can say that, further simplify, that if AT minus AF divided by AT whole square, it's much smaller than 1. Because you know the flow area is very small compared to the float area. So, I can say that whole thing that it is CD is proportional to, or rather CD, I can say it is equal to constant, some constant into what is varying? AT minus AF. So the thing is that here it is one thing is that it is linearly. What is varying is AT. It is linearly changing with the AT there. That square root and all the things are gone. And here it is a nicely here there the simpler relationship. And as the pressure increases, it will go up, and I can make the, say suppose scale, I mean graduations on the tube itself, and where it will write it down 200 liter per meter minute, 300 liter per minute, or this sort of flow rate. So we can say that if AT varies linearly with X, say I call it, this is your, okay, I will bear that, I will put it Y there. It's a Y direction. If we say it is X or Y, then QV. Why I called it CD? It is QV. It is coming from this one. QV is equal to all constant CD twice G by gamma 2, VF by AF, gamma 1 minus gamma 2. All of them are constant. So it is like this. Then the QV, you can say it can be expressed in terms of some constant K1 plus of K2 into Y. So we can have a linear relationship, and that is the advantage. But often you can easily understand that the position you can measure it through your Y, or you can put some sort of connect it to some LVDT code here, and here the LVDT you just put it there. So the core moves the LVDT. From the LVDT, I can also convert it into an electrical signal. That is also possible. But what I wanted to say is that this is linear, and it is much simpler than compared to the other type of flow meters like orifice or Venturi tube type of thing there. So we'll see. I think we cannot continue because time is already up. So we'll see about the float design in the next class. In the first design, we can next class. So how do it be? How do you design the float? What should be its density, and how it will look like that? Because I told that it should be insensitive to variation of the density of the liquid fluid, as well as we have seen it. It should be insensitive to the viscous effect, or like this. That we'll discuss it in the next class. So, any question? So, few things are to be remembered, that it has to be always vertical. If it is inclined, then there will be an error in it. You cannot measure it correctly. And the float has a particular design, but you can see it here, there, graduations on a glass tube, and see what is that. Or you can generate some electrical signal using LVDT code or like this there. But definitely it is much more simpler, and that's why everywhere, wherever you are measuring the flow rate or like this, apart from this Venturi or orifice or whatever you have it like this, there is always a rotameter. There is always a rotameter so that you can visualize the area. Of course, one question remains, why we call it rotameter? Because there is it should be a variable area type or like this. Why do you call it a rotameter? That's a question that we'll answer it in the next class.